Okay, so let me short by,
Good morning.
Good morning.
okay.
All right. Why don't we bring this meeting to order? Looks like people are joining. Do we have any public comment this morning? Thank you, Reed. Hearing none, let's move on to the minutes.
Hey, Laura, can you give me just a minute? I have to get the meeting room set up.
Of course, no worries.
Yeah, sorry. I'll be right back.
No worries. It'll give people a chance to, it looks like a few other people are need to join anyway.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let's see.
No worries. We're still on time.
Okay. There's 3 people in the waiting room. Okay.
Good morning.
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 We're waiting for the meeting room to wake up.
That's all right. I can pull the minutes up if you want, and you guys can start looking at those.
Okay, that sounds great. Any comment on the minutes?
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Carl.
A second.
Thank you, Gary. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone abstain? That's me, Laura. I wasn't here. Any nays? No. Okay. Thank you very much. The minutes have passed. Hi, Peggy. I see you've joined, and I'm Laura Meyer, Chair. All right, let's go on to the annual report.
So I think this was just a final run through. I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that you were just postponing the final acceptance of this until we could kind of clean it up. So
Mhm.
having done that, I still need some pictures. If anybody happens to have a picture of Jude, send it to me, because I looked and I don't seem to have any pictures of her.
Carl, do you?
I don't have any pictures myself, but I remember, I think you could maybe pull one from the either last year's or the year before report. It was kind of an outside gathering, and I think there was a picture of her in that.
Oh, okay. Look for that.
That's what I was thinking too, Carl. I feel like I've seen a picture of her in some publication here in town recently, recognizing her for some work she had done.
Yeah, I thought that maybe it was the Observer had an article on her.
That's
Oh, really?
what I was thinking too, yeah.
Yeah, I'll look online and see if I can find that.
The only comment I had, I don't think Kim is here, but I know she was concerned about taking that tree down at Mud Pond because of the eastern ash borer. And I'm wondering if we should. Oh, I think it is changed. The tree will be removed if it becomes infested. Okay. Yep. That is different. Okay, great. That's great.
Oh, Reed, you beat me to it. I was just gonna drop that into the chat.
Oh,
It wasn't that long ago. It was only
Those millennial
6 weeks
fingers,
ago.
it's all right.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. Yep, the Rotary
Great.
Club.
oh, awesome. Thank you.
That's where I saw her too. All right, so it looks like the annual report is ready to go. Does anyone have a comment on it?
I think it looks great and was a perfect example of a team effort once again.
That is great.
Worked by committee.
Do I hear a motion to approve the annual report?
I'll move to approve the annual report.
Thanks, Reed. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Carl. All those in favor of approving the annual report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Is anyone abstaining? All right, the annual report has passed. Thank you, Melinda, for
you
sending
so
this
much.
on.
Thank you all.
Mhm. All right, we are great. We're so ahead of schedule. I felt so guilty about running over 2 times ago. We all had stuff to do. Okay, let's go on to the draft letter for the wakeboarding rules. I wrote this and I toned it down from what the wakeboarding group had written because their concern is certainly that, wakeboards removed from all lakes, small lakes because of the 1,000-foot depth, or sorry, 1,000-foot shoreline requirement and 20-foot depth. So.
I had one comment, Laura, on this.
Yeah.
And that is, I think it was 2/3 of the way through, it mentions the 1,000 feet from shoreline.
Yeah.
I guess it's the second to last paragraph.
Yeah.
And it cites the depths less than 20 feet.
Yeah.
Just ahead of that, it mentions the size of the wakes being much larger than other boats of similar size.
Yes.
It does not, as far as I could take in, it did not mention anything about disruption of sediment and the lake floor.
Okay.
So I thought if we're going to mention the 20-foot depth thing, we should acknowledge at least some reasoning why there's a depth concern.
Okay, that sounds great, Reed. Thank you.
So, can you guys see the report? I mean, the letter?
Yes.
Okay. How about, can generate much larger waves than the boats of a similar size, potentially disturbing sediment, causing shoreline erosion or disturbing wildlife?
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be sufficient.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Oh, I don't have edit access, so maybe Laura, if you can
I'll do that.
get in
Yeah,
there, that would be
In
great.
my head, I thought it would be a separate sentence because the displacement isn't the problem for the sediment issue, and the disruption of invasives on the lake floor. The issue with that is the angle of the turbulence coming out of the motor. So
Mhm.
Yeah, so it almost seems like the 1,000-foot depth should be attached to the previous sentence, and then I should mention the sediment with the 20-foot depth. I can just switch that around.
yeah, if you want to find a way to fix those two sentences to include something about the
Okay.
motor angle. Yep.
Yeah, and I was also toying with the idea of putting in something about disruption to canoes and kayaks, but I thought that what I had was enough.
Yeah, and this will be taken in context along with all the other statements on this topic.
Right. All right. Any other comments about this letter that we are going to send on to the Agency of Natural Resources and the DEC? I think we should have a motion to approve since this is coming from the Conservation Commission. I
I'll
will
make a motion.
Okay,
Okay, go
thank
ahead.
you.
No, go ahead.
Is there a motion to approve the letter about wakeboarding to the ANR and DEC?
I'll make a motion to approve the letter as written or as modified.
Okay.
to-
Yeah, and I'll,
Second.
okay, thank you, Reed. Any further discussion? All those in favor of submitting this letter to the ANR and the DEC signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Does anyone abstain?
Yes,
All right,
please.
Pardon?
Yes, I'd like to abstain.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Yeah. So, Eric, what is I was just curious, what is the conflict of interest with this?
Yeah, it comes more in my day job than as a conservation commission member, but as you all know, it's a small state and small community. So it's just, I work very closely with Julie Moore and folks at DEC, and in the context of my day job, I'm not supposed to be submitting opinions like this on lake management issues. So
Okay,
it's all related to my day job and not conservation commission, but I just like to keep the lanes clear of things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you for clearing that up.
Is there anything that should be done to modify that signature, Eric, to make it more clear that you're not?
Yeah, thanks, Linda. I think as written, I think it's fine. If you're going to include all the conservation members on it, I would just ask that you just not include me. But as written, I think it's fine.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna put my name.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you just listed yourself, right, Laura, at the bottom? If you could
Yes.
scroll down, Linda.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was part of the form letter.
Yep. Yeah, just if there was any question about whether the commission supported the letter, we would have in the minutes that it was approved and it would show that Eric abstained. Yep.
Yep.
Just as long as the minutes show that. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I'll put it in the minutes. I said the motion was carried 5-0-1 with Eric Howe abstaining.
Mhm.
Perfect. Thank you.
And it's interesting to me, I guess, letters are sent like this in the mail instead of emailed. Is that typically how things are done? Yeah.
I think you could,
yeah.
email it. Yeah, just as an attachment, a PDF attachment.
Yeah, I would think so. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
All righty. Okay. We can now go on to trapping on town lands. We're actually pretty early.
One thing we could consider, Laura, is to take a look at the summary of volunteer work that was in staff report section. I don't know, Melinda, if you feel like that's appropriate, but that might allow us not to get to topics earlier than scheduled.
That's fine with me if you guys want to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because there might be other people that want to get on for the trapping issue.
I
Okay.
also met with Walter Pullman yesterday and talked to him about a couple issues. So somewhere, if we have time, I can summarize that as well.
Okay, why don't you go ahead, Gary, since we're talking about it.
Okay, as you might remember, we discussed some kind of method of incorporating our conservation values in town in some kind of defendable way, such as streams, wetlands, forest blocks, etc. So I thought I'd chat with Walter as the director of the Field Naturalist Program and I guess you could consider a leader in some of this conservation efforts. But before I get into that, he came up with another Williston related issue that he wanted you guys to be aware of and see what you thought of it. The Field Naturalist Program, I guess this year has around 8 or 10 graduate students, and they're going to take on a project in Williston at the Handy Farm, which is I think a relatively new farm or recently bought by Laura Handy. It's on South Road near the corner of Oak Hill Road, about 110 acres. And she's very interested in making it a community asset, the whole farm, in terms of education, as well as use of a newly renovated barn for town education issues, as well as UVM. And what Walter would like to do would be, he normally doesn't work on private farms, but since she's really interested in this conservation as well as his desire to work in Williston again, and the fact that the UVM extension program is heavily interested in working to develop kind of a farmscape management contribution in using this land as an example. So he's looking for some kind of partnership between Laura Handy, the UVM Extension Program, and the Williston Conservation Commission. And he says he's not looking for money. He's not looking for any resources other than, you know, our involvement in it and our backing of such a program. So that's one thing we talked about. And then we also did talk about two other things. One was the criteria for conservation. And he said that, you know, he certainly has some ideas of how we might go about a workshop or getting input into how to value those different conservation criteria. I guess that's about all I have for now.
Gary, do you know, I'm curious, but I drive by that farm all the time. What are they growing in those hoop houses?
I honestly don't know. Yeah, but he, you know, Walter said if we're interested at least in inquiring more about it, we could have a site visit and check out the efforts going on along with the extension, UVM extension.
Looks to me from their Facebook page as though they're growing Christmas trees for sure as one.
In
Yeah.
the hoop? No.
No, just on the
No.
property.
Oh, I haven't seen those. Okay.
I mean, they're also interested in public access, and I believe that borders on the recreation area on Lake Iroquois down on the south side of the project. So that's something we've always been, you know, interested in from a primitive path standpoint and other issues like that.
Is that in the tier 1 section, Melinda?
Yes.
Would Walter be interested in making a presentation to the Conservation Commission?
Yes, definitely. He has a group of students that are starting to work on it in January, and they'll soon after they start, they're going to come up with kind of a plan. And he would definitely like to, you know, invite us out there or meet with us at any time to discuss that.
That sounds really wonderful, Gary. Thank you.
Gary, I'm old enough to remember Walter as one of the field naturalist students working on a Williston project, probably back in the 90s.
Early 90s. Yeah, he actually mentioned that, Carl. He said, is Carl still there? I said, yes. Yeah. He said, say hi for me. Yeah. And another issue that Walter, that I talked to him briefly about, and I don't know what stage this is at, Melinda, with the Boomhauer conservation land down near Five Tree Hill. Is that still progressing at all?
No, I asked Dan Boomhauer a while back where things were at, and he just said, you know, we'll get in touch with you, you know, if and when we decide to do this. So it sounds like it's being put on hold for one reason or another.
Yeah, okay. Because Walter said that that's interesting too, to have his students, you know, maybe do, if we approve to do some kind of inventory assessment and trail potential and things like that. So anyway, should I tell him we're interested in learning more about this and maybe having him speak with us, or what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'd say definitely.
Yeah, that sounds like a very interesting collaboration. Yeah, I know that Dan Boomhauer's brother died, right? I saw that in the paper. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary, for making that connection.
Gary, did you have more on the topic of his opinions about how we could craft language?
Related to the conservation criteria things?
Yeah.
Well, he had some ideas, and we didn't have a lot of time, and he was really pushing this other thing, but he definitely said that, yes, he can work with us some more on that. So I'll follow up on that with him and find out what the next steps might be, if he has some different options we could pursue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And we still have time now to look at the summary of volunteer work on the town hall field.
Okay. Yeah, so mainly I just wanted to make you aware of volunteer efforts. I would say really primarily from Chapin Kaner, Reed's dad. He's been doing a lot, both on his work on the town hall fields in back of the town hall to control invasives and develop the little nature trail loop. And he's been also working with a Eagle Scout candidate to put up a kiosk, which is now actually done. And, you know, so every year he sends me a report of all of the work that he's done to control invasives on the town hall meadow. And, you know, for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years, he's been, or longer probably, but he's been delivering these reports that, you know, just detail what he's done. He's been removing poison parsnip. He's been stewarding the nature trail, doing some mowing, and also just making lots of interesting observations about, you know, just everything. He's also set up a remote camera to capture wildlife, and has got pictures of black bear and bobcat and fox and other things. And, you know, also removing buckthorn from the hedgerows and from around the small pond. So yeah, and he would like to continue to try to work with Public Works around the mowing. It seems to really sort of happen on an ad hoc basis whenever they can get to it, and usually happens like right after it rains. And I felt kind of a real lack of control over that myself. Just you know, yeah, it just seems like it just happens and nobody really gives us any heads up. And you know, I've spoken to Bruce about this, but it seems like, you know, it just continues to happen sort of ad hoc. One thing I've thought of is trying to maybe see if we could contract the mowing out rather than have Public Works do it. There is somebody who does brush hogging that I could contact and ask how much it would be, you know, to just do some brush hogging at the end of the year. Another thing that Chapin has mentioned is letting some more of the field kind of go wild and not brush hogging it at all. The section that we've let kind of go along the boundary, along the eastern boundary, is really quite amazing now. There's all kinds of you know, stuff coming in, shrubs and native species, so it's really pretty cool. But on the other hand, the conservation easement with VHCB does say that the town has an obligation to keep the land open for, I guess, I don't know, view shed purposes or whatever. So we do sort of have to work with that. The other thing that he's done on the town hall field is he worked with a group to plant just sort of a mini trial nursery on the town hall meadow, planting some live stakes and fascines of I guess dogwood and willow. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, he's also certified as a pesticide applicator, so he's able to cut buckthorn and then treat the cut stumps on town property. I don't know. I think, I'm not sure if I probably missed some stuff. Oh, I know what I was going to say is, besides the town hall meadow, Chapin has been working on kind of establishing a town urban park on the Mahan property, north of Route 2, but sort of south of the Allenbrook School, because the Allenbrook School already uses that area as an outdoor classroom. So Chapin's got all kinds of ideas about, how we could maybe implement some stewardship to really create like an urban forest there, and to kind of engage people more on riparian restoration in that area. He's also done with other Sustainable Williston members some riparian plantings along the stream on Taft Farms. And so anyway, that's another area that he's been really active in and trying to kind of steward that area. So anyway, just wanted to make you aware that his volunteer efforts are pretty exemplary and should be recognized. And I kind of wish, well, both he and Laura have really been just leading volunteer efforts around town, and Terry too. And it would be great to continue to leverage people, leaders in the community that way, to see if we can engage more volunteers in town. But anyway.
And Carl too. For the
And
Bob
Carl,
Williston,
yeah, and Carl.
All that too.
Yeah.
This is a great report, and I think thanks for bringing it to our attention, Melinda. I think I heard you say you had some concerns. I think it was around mowing, but before we get there, I don't want to distract myself from a point you made a minute ago about the value of volunteers, and I mean, it's great that all these folks are doing all these volunteering, they're trying to do all these great things, and I guess my question is, how, or are we able to better document those efforts? To acknowledge and thank them, but also B, just for towns, the town's own purposes, like just putting my basic program hat back on for a minute. We're doing this also, and are going to be keeping better track of volunteer hours that are reported to us for our projects, and we're going to translate that into match. So I'm using there's a website called independentsector.org that goes through a whole formula to calculate the value of volunteer time, and they provide at a national average. And if you plug in your email address and risk, to getting spam or whatever, then or unwanted emails anyway, you can get down into the state level, and at the state, the historic dollar value of a volunteer hour in Vermont right now is, I just lost it, $26 and change. So, I think I saw on the screen that Chapin had volunteered 28 or 75 hours of his time, multiply that by 26, and that's a good value. Plus, all of us on the Conservation Commission, for the most part, volunteering our time every 2 weeks or 2 weeks a month. And then what Laura does, and Terry and Carl and others around town, that's significant value that I think actually, we just finished the annual report, might be worth including in the annual report.
Yeah, it absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. And it's been in my mind to figure out a way to better track these volunteer hours. Chapin's been very good about tracking his hours, but I think, I would like to come up with a sort of a streamlined process of doing that. And I know, also think about the Adopt a Trail folks. I know Terry's done a lot of work, and then there's some groups like the Rotary who have done trail projects, and occasionally the Scouts. So yeah, all of that stuff, it would be, it adds up to a lot. And
There's also the nest watching project
Yes.
over at Catamount.
right.
Yeah. so
Right. Yeah, so
It sounds like a topic to put on a future agenda, Laura, to brainstorm how to better track and recognize volunteer work on town land.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I know that I keep track of all hours that I spent it at Catamount, and I put it in a computer folder for the Catamount annual report. So I think a future agenda item would be great. There could even be, we could even have on the volunteer forums an extra form about how many hours were spent that could be submitted to Melinda or whatever. So.
well, so there is an online work report form, but I think that it rarely gets used. And maybe I need to just, kind of send that around to folks that I know to the trail adopters and to those that I know have done volunteer work. And I know, Laura, besides your hours, you've also, had volunteers working with you. And so there's all their hours as well. So, maybe I will do that. I'll just send around something for people to fill out as a start.
There is also, we happen to be, Laura and I were over at Catamount doing some treatment, and there was a whole group there from the outdoor center had gotten a group from Richmond to cut back a bunch of stuff. So that's other hours too.
Melinda,
Okay.
I just had a comment about, go ahead, Eric. I had a comment about the VHCB issue and mowing. I wonder, does anybody know if there's any flexibility in that? I'm just thinking with the current situation with trying to sequester carbon as well as reducing pollution from mowing and things like that, if they could, if there's some kind of idea where you can not mow 25% of the open or some kind of issue like that.
Probably. Yeah, I bet there would be.
I'd be happy if we wanted to communicate with them about it, Melinda, I'd be happy to be involved.
Okay. Thanks.
The area that we've been able to stop mowing, we have actually removed some trees that are trying to establish to keep it open, to keep it kind of shrubland that could be brush hogged if it needed to, but it really is quite amazing. It's right out the window behind my head right now, and it's just much better habitat in addition to all the things you mentioned, Gary.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing to consider is that I'm not sure that Public Works still has an idea that they're going to put a stormwater back there, but they may be sort of holding out some hope that could happen, in which case they would want to continue to mow the whole field annually. But I mean, I can always check and see if they have given up on that or not.
That was the state that was going to do that, Melinda?
No,
is it?
no, it's the town, and
Okay.
they didn't get a wetland permit that they needed.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Melinda. We're actually pretty much right on time to start our discussion of the trapping policy.
Yeah, and I know there's some folks from the public here. Jay Petrillo wanted to present some material to you. Peggy Larson is here as well. So I don't know, yeah, how you want it. I guess, Laura, I'll let you.
Yeah, first, is there any, you weren't here when I asked for public comment. Do you have any comment on the animal trapping on town land policy? Starting with you, Jay.
Unmute here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I have just some concerns about the language, particularly in the first part, the purpose, about affecting non-target animals 2/3 of the time. What is that? What's the source of that?
I believe that's something that Peggy Larson had stated.
Oh, okay. I just think that's anecdotal. The other thing is, as a resident of this town, we've been trapping on a regular basis because of the damage that the beavers are continuing to do, affecting private property. And we just don't want to be harassed because we tried baffles, we tried all sorts of things. And I feel that the language right now and the tone is that of shaming. And that's where I am right now with this. And I can present, I have a PowerPoint I can present, it's very quick. But that's where I am, and that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Jay. If we have time, we'll get to your PowerPoint. That would be very interesting. Peggy, do you have any comments?
Yeah, good morning, Laura. First of all, I apologize for not responding to you this morning. I was on mute. So,
No, that's okay.
Good morning to you too. Well, I'm looking at this from a veterinarian's point of view, and as far as the number of animals that are trapped that are not the target species, I've only used 1 out of 3. But if you go looking into the literature, you'll find as many as 18. So I took the minimum for that, and there's no way that you can make trapping species specific. It just doesn't work. As a veterinarian, I've certainly, you probably all know this, and if you do, don't just tell me to shut up, but I've treated dogs and cats that were caught in traps, and the injuries to those animals is beyond description. Broken legs, rotting tissue. That little cat from Heinsberg that came in probably was in a trap, probably 4 or 5 days. She was so badly dehydrated, I couldn't save her. The tissue around the fractured bone in her front leg was totally rotten. You could smell it. And so looking at this from a veterinarian's point of view, trapping is extremely inhumane. And of course, one of the bigger problems too is the fact that the target animal is not always the one that's caught. So if you have anything you want to ask me, please feel free to do that. But that's basically what my problems with trapping are, having experienced animals that have been caught in traps, and the pain and suffering that these animals go through.
And Peggy, I'm right that you're also have trapped in the past. So there's a difference between somebody who's a responsible person, who's responsible as far as trapping goes, and those that, are irresponsible, don't check their traps, correct?
Yes, when I was a kid in high school, I used to trap muskrat. I've also been a hunter. I have nothing against hunting as long as you take a rifle and go out there and shoot what you intend to kill and then eat it. But as far as trapping is concerned, yes, I have experience with trapping. I grew up in North Dakota, and we're a little wild out there sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Okay, Jay, do you have any comment about that?
Well, a couple of things. Our trapper is a licensed trapper, and the trapper does donate to various families. Beaver meat is very tasty. It's also very nutritional. And if there was a wild game butcher within Chittenden County, we would donate the meat to the food shelf. The problem is the closest butcher I found was in Danville, and my wife didn't want me driving to Danville in the CRV with some beavers in the back. And our trapper is an independent, and it's very rare to find one. I was thinking about taking the course and getting a trapping license and donating the meat myself. I mean, the beavers we catch are about 40 pounds, and that's a fair amount of meat to donate to the food shelf. And right now, UVM did a survey, I think fall of 2020, a third of Vermonters are labeled as food insecure. And
Can I ask a question? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
yes,
Jay, I was just curious, are you currently trapping on town land or are you trapping on private
no,
land?
it's Allenbrook. I just looked at the report and we trap in Allenbrook. But right now, I mean, there's a lot of shaming going on and a lot of misinformation going on about trapping. And we just don't want to be publicly shamed for what we're doing.
Can you tell me what the misinformation is that you are experiencing?
Yeah. From Save Our Wildlife or Protect Our Wildlife out of Stowe. One is the survey from the Center for Rural Studies that's been going around about the percentage that think that trapping should be banned. And it's statistically insignificant. Only 300 people responded out of the whole state.
Well, that really doesn't address what happens to these animals. I mean, these animals are sentient beings. They feel pain just like you and I do.
Well,
And it doesn't
curious
address
thing is
non-target species either.
well, I mean, same way with you go fishing. I mean, if you're fishing for perch and you catch a trout, I mean, that's a non-target species. The other thing is that why do we place sort of a Disney-esque sort of perception on beavers and deer? When we tried baffles, we looked into beaver deceivers, and we're sort of at a loss. And the beavers, I know, have been here for centuries, way before our development was built. But for some reason, the beavers favor that. And the other thing is that the baffles that the town puts in, baffles do not cull the beavers. They do not, they just go downstream to where we are.
Yeah, just a reminder. Thank you, Jay. Make sure you make your comments to me and not each other. It's probably wise to make your comments to the commission instead of asking each other questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
Oh, I'm
Thank you.
sorry, Laura. Yeah, I'm
Oh, that's
sorry.
okay. No problem. I think that you're probably on the same page with a lot of this. I'm sure Jay does not, as a responsible trapper, they would not want animals to be left in traps for days and mutilated as well. Jay, would you like to, we have time. Would you like to show your short presentation? It's about how many minutes is it?
I could do it really quick, just a couple of minutes, just a PowerPoint. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Yeah, let me, hold on a second. Okay. All right, so you can now share. I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, we have two stormwater retention ponds, east and west. And according to Allenbrook Water Quality Monitoring, the labeled Allenbrook as a flashy stream characterized by very high flows immediately following heavy rain events. So there's a lot of ebb and flow that happens. And here's the stormwater retention pond in the common area behind our property. And you can see the catch basin and standing water, depending on the time of the year, is anywhere from 1 to 2 feet. 2 inches of rain can raise this level 3 to 4 feet. And you can see this is done October 31st, and you can see how flooded that is. That's just 2 inches of rain. And let me see if I can play this. Can you see the video?
Mhm.
This is October 31st, and this is panning towards Allenbrook. And you can see the flooded area. So that impedes the drainage of our stormwater retention pond. And this is the flooding caused by the beaver dam, or it was dismantled and the beavers were trapped. And that's the impact of the damage. And this sort of compromises the integrity, what the purpose of the stormwater retention pond can do. And again, 2 inches of rain can raise that 3 to 4 feet. And this is the view from the bridge, our bridge that connects our property, the common area to the town rec pass. Again, this is the flooded Allenbrook. You can see the dam right there.
Sorry, I think I missed, did you say where this is? I'm not recognizing that. bridge.
This is our bridge that connects Old Stage Estates to the town rec pass.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And you can see the water path that connects our property, Southfield Drive, to the rec pass. You can see there's a river that's flowing across the path. And that river was knee deep. And this is the river across the path that's knee deep.
So I guess, well, from what I see there, that's a public safety issue. But I guess I don't quite follow. I thought I heard you say that you were hiring somebody to do the trapping, but it seems like that would be, if it's damaging or compromising the infrastructure, the town's infrastructure, or a public safety issue, it seems like that should be a town managed trapping effort. Did I miss something?
Are you addressing it to me or to the
Well, I guess to you, simply just because you're the one bringing this to our attention.
Well, the bridge is private property, and it connects Old Stages, which is Southfield Drive and Paddock Lane, to the town rec pass. And that's private property.
Okay.
And the flooding occurs on our common land. And so I'm just wondering, for the town's role in this, yeah, it'll be great if it's a townwide effort. But you know, we've had a history of beaver issues.
And sorry, I'm not remembering where the town is at with management and upkeep of stormwater ponds. I think that, has the town taken over control and management of those stormwater ponds in that neighborhood? I am familiar with that.
Yes, we have a signed agreement. The town has taken over the management. That was we've had to upgrade our stormwater retention ponds, and we did that in 2018 at a cost of over $250,000.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and is Public Works Department aware of this potential compromise in the structural integrity of stormwater ponds?
Not to my knowledge. That's why I'm presenting right now.
Okay.
Eric, are you suggesting that you think that the language that we've been talking about might allow for a process to assess this sort of issue and work on non-lethal methods first, but ultimately still have the option of using trapping to control damage to infrastructure?
I would think so. I mean, I haven't looked at it since I haven't looked at the policy through that lens whenever it was the last time we discussed it, but I would think there should be something in the policy that allows for, particularly for the town, to manage beavers in this case, if they are causing damage to town infrastructure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there is.
I think there is, yeah.
Linda, can you show us the policy again? Thank you,
Sure.
Jay, for that presentation.
Okay, can I interject real quick?
Sure.
We contacted Tyler Brown, when this got to a head back in August. We contacted Tyler Brown from the state. And we were going to go with the baffle because the state had money to subsidize the baffle. But apparently everything else in the pandemic, the baffles were back ordered and he couldn't help us out until the spring. So yeah, of all things to be back ordered. So we were going to try a baffle again. And Scott Lyle of Beaver Deceivers is way too expensive. He starts at like $3,500. And his beaver deceivers require periodic maintenance because they get jammed. And he was just, the price was too out of price. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Jay.
So I want to follow up a little bit of what Eric was referring to. I think from what I understand with this policy, it's just for town land. So any kind of trapping on non-town land isn't covered by this policy. And then as Melinda said, there's a big section of the policy that deals with beaver management that would just be under town control, I guess. Is that correct, Melinda?
On town land, yeah.
Yeah, on town land. And so I think,
or to protect, I think they could trap in other places with landowner permission to protect town infrastructure.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But this policy is just, trapping
Town.
on town land. So we're not, trying to regulate Jay or others from trapping on private land.
Right.
Mhm.
So there is that, and I agree that. So we're at kind of, I think we're kind of in a gray area on this specific example that Jay has brought to our attention, in that it is on town land, but it's town-owned infrastructure that's potentially being damaged. So I think this particular example, and these types of examples could be happening elsewhere on town too, because as the town begins to take over stormwater systems or stormwater ponds anyway.
It seems like that's a public works issue, in my opinion. I don't know. I mean, it's not like we would refuse to allow trapping in relative to that issue. I mean, I think we would probably favor that. But
yeah, and so I guess I agree with all that, Gary, and I guess I'll put the question back to Jay, and so Jay, you were interested in bringing this issue to our attention today, but I also heard you say something else at a higher level, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I'm not remembering exactly what you said, but it was something about the perception of trapping, and that was I think another concern you had about the policy.
Just again, the language of perception of trapping, because it seems that for certain wildlife, public perception seems to place sort of a Disney-esque quality on certain wildlife creatures. And whenever there's any type of management done, of course, trapping for us is the last resort. We couldn't do a baffle because it's back ordered, but we just don't want to be publicly shamed for what we're doing. We put the signs up when the trapper comes. And I mean, these people are independent. A lot of them are working full time, and our trapper is very responsible. Public Works is hired before, and the last time we did this, we were publicly shamed in the front porch forum.
So I have a question for you, and that's, I totally understand that this sentence is a value judgment, and is it that you're sort of responding to? And you know, if we took that sentence out, the policy would still be, you know, the policy, and, you know, would still address people's concerns around public safety issues, et cetera. I mean, does
Glenda,
that
could you
help?
reshare your screen? I think we're still seeing Jay's screen.
Oh, hold on. Okay. Do you
You
see
know, you
it?
can get,
No,
you
we
can
don't.
also
we-
pull it, yeah,
God.
you can also pull this stuff up on the website at the same time if you have that ability,
Yeah.
the town website.
Yeah, I've
That's-
got it. I've got it up, and I agree that that second sentence under the purpose. I think that's. I assume that that's where Jay's
Right.
point is coming from. I agree that that is very subjective. That animal trapping is inhumane and indiscriminate. So maybe we should consider removing that. But the second part of that sentence, affecting non-target animals 2/3 of the time, I think that type of information is important to include. I agree that it would be good to validate that with some, nothing against Peggy's observations, but something that we can stand behind that's published.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. Some kind of citation of a peer-reviewed something.
Yep.
Yeah, so I took the language that was right out of the petition, the public petition. And so I would put the onus on the drafters of that petition to send me a citation, and I'll check it out and you know, include that language if it's appropriate, and if it can be cited to a reliable source.
But I still think, like you suggested, Melinda, taking that sentence out may
Mhm.
be valuable as well, because I think there's a bunch of things that are pretty subjective in there, like inhumane, the definition of inhumane, indiscriminate, you know, there's a lot of things that are just thrown out there with no backing. So, and I don't think it really hurts the policy if we just remove that sentence.
Mhm.
I think it might be good, Gary, for context and for future discussions, just to have some data in there to explain why we're doing this, just to provide additional support to explain why we're doing this.
But we could add a couple words like animal trapping is potentially inhumane and indiscriminate, you know, or some way of softening a little bit, because I think if it's done right, some people would argue that it isn't inhumane and indiscriminate.
Right, and that's why I feel like that first clause in that sentence is very subjective, as people have said, and that could be removed. But I think that the
Well, you know,
point
this sentence comes from me as a veterinarian who has treated these animals. And like I say, so many of them have broken bones, so many of them have tissue damage. How can you say that this is humane to do this, to cause an animal to have that much pain, to be in a trap for a minimum of 12 hours with a broken bone, with rotting flesh, with teeth that they've tried to get their legs out of the trap, so they chew on the trap, they have broken teeth. This isn't anything I've made up. This is something I've had hands-on experience with. And the other thing is, obviously, there are non-target animals that are going to be caught in these traps because I've treated them. So I have an issue with you taking that sentence out of there, because this is based on what my experience is, what this is factual. I'm not making this up. You could put in there animal trapping is potentially inhumane, but I wouldn't take that sentence out because it's fact, it's true.
I think the 2/3 of the time thing, I mean, you may have evidence of that, but I mean, I think that's a really hard thing to measure. I mean, how do you know how many traps were out there in order to determine what percentage of the time were non-target? And so at least that one, you know, if we're going to keep it in, needs to have a citation or something from a reputable source documenting that with real data.
I can probably find that for you. And I've also, there is some data from a trapper up in Maine who had, during the time he was trapping, had trap dogs and cats. And the game warden up there had told him to just kill the cats, because if people take them to a veterinarian, you're going to have people, against trapping. I have that reference.
I'd like to make a comment from a different perspective, or suggest a different way of thinking of this, and that is that this policy's purpose could be stated as if we kept something like depending on the way trapping is done, it's potentially inhumane. What we're trying to do here is address public safety issues in something that's hard to regulate. Basically, it's hard to regulate and monitor trapping activity. And so we're trying to put some safeguards around the way it's done on town land.
So I guess, the original reason, the petition that was brought forward to the select board was because there was a trap set on town land illegally, and a resident came across this coyote in a trap, and they didn't know how long it had been there. So this was one of the reasons, was to prevent this from happening again, and having it potentially be a dog, a child, or whatever. So it would be the safety of the public who's using these town lands that are open for recreation, for walkers. And there still is the provision in this to allow the town to trap, or when there is a safety hazard or infrastructure or whatever. So it seems there is provisions in here.
I would like to propose that maybe rather than having language in here that is very loaded with just sort of value laden language, and this is going to sound provocative, but animal trapping is inhumane and indiscriminate. Well, there are other things that are inhumane and indiscriminate, like allowing your cat to roam outside and catch and kill songbirds. So I think there's an inherent value judgment in here. Maybe instead, what could be said is, they're in response to citizen concerns about trapping, and just sort of take the value judgment out of it, but just say, this is in response to citizen concerns about trapping, and including what Terry said. And this is going to be the policy. It's going to, provide the town with some control over who traps on town land and for what reasons. And basically, that's pretty much it.
But the town is not regulating trapping anywhere else in town, so people are free to trap. I don't know what the percentage is of town land versus privately owned land. So it's not that this group, the citizens, were asking for a total ban in the town of Williston. It's just on town-owned lands.
Right, and it's not really an ordinance. It's really a policy statement about how the town will decide where and by whom trapping happens on town lands.
Now, just to throw in there, I'm just remembering, I was thinking that the woman that from the Protect Our Wildlife, she did say that they would be willing to fund the beaver baffler or beaver deceiver. So they do have funds to help out with those devices. So if the cost is a problem, that might be a spot to go look.
Oh, thanks for that information, Terry. So we're past time on this, and I think that as a commission, we need to come back to this because we need to change some of the language. And I want to thank Peggy and Jay for their comments. It really leads to we like to hear these voices because we like to hear different perspectives, and it helps the commission decide on how to form these policies. So thank you very much. And we're going to put this on the agenda probably in the next meeting. Is that okay, Melinda? Does the select board need to see this anytime soon?
No, I think they're busy with a lot of other stuff. So if you want to read through the policy and come to the next meeting with further comments about the language, in the meantime, I will work on this first paragraph and try to insert some language that's sort of less value laden, I guess, and more factual.
We got
Yeah.
caught up on this purpose statement, but the remainder of it seemed much more straightforward. So I think that seems like a good approach.
Yep. And Melinda, if you want to get together, we can work on that together, or you can do it on your own, whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Yeah, either way, we can work on it together. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Melinda.
Yeah, I would agree that I haven't heard anything this morning of anybody speaking against the actual policy in this. It's all about the introductory language. Policy to me sounds very reasonable.
Mhm. All right. So Peggy and Jay, thank you so much for attending. You're welcome to stay or for our next item if you'd like.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to continue our discussion of the significant wildlife habitat areas.
Okay. I put together a presentation. Hold on. Just trying to share my screen again.
Yeah, I saw that there was a link in the emailed copy of the agenda, but that link wasn't working for me. I wasn't sure if.
No, because I took it down because I worked on this some more, and
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
and when you're working with PowerPoint and you use their design ideas, it does weird things when you try to convert it to a PDF. So
Oh, really?
yeah, so unfortunately, I just had to bag the whole PDF. And can you see the PowerPoint screen?
Yes, thank you so much for doing this.
Sure. So I wanted to, throughout our discussions, there have been some questions from you and some things that you wanted more information on. So the purpose of this was just to provide you with more information. Let's see, that did not work. Okay. Okay. There.
Presenting
Now
on the
that
other
works.
screen.
Can you see the next slide?
No, we're still seeing the opening slide.
Oh, for crying out loud. All right. I'm just going to.
Here we go.
Can you see it?
Know that you're not the only one that has this problem.
Yeah.
She's several times yesterday.
You can also minimize your toolbar at the top with the little arrow on the right bottom right hand corner of the toolbar. Directly beneath the share red button.
Okay.
Do you see the
Oh, that down
at
arrow?
the top? Yeah, the top of the scroll bar, there's a little downward facing arrow.
Way to the right.
Way to the right. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I
all the way
see.
it goes straight down from there. Do you see the small little arrow? Yep. If you click that, you should be able to minimize the toolbar.
Okay.
Maybe not.
All right. Is that better?
So, yes. Oh, that's so much better. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. We'll see. Okay. So you see a map with the revised significant wildlife habitat area. the hatched area shows the conserved lands overlaid. And these are lands protected through conservation easements, through lands that has been given to the town, state protected lands, or some parcels, a few on there with some deed restrictions. And what I didn't include are open space parcels protected as a condition of approval. So basically the table shows you the categories SWHA Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, and the combined SWHA, the acreage townwide, and the acreage that is protected by some mechanism. So 17% of the land in Williston has some protection, and that's more if you include the open space protected as a condition of approval. Virtually all the protected land in Williston has some significant wildlife habitat in it. Nearly 2/3 of the town is significant wildlife habitat, and 27% of this is protected. And notably, 40% of existing agricultural land is protected. So that this just shows you the percentage of significant wildlife habitat that's protected, and how much of it is Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So 60% of the significant wildlife habitat that's protected is Tier 1, 6% is Tier 2, and 34% is Tier 3. And then this shows you the parcels that are heavily constrained by significant wildlife habitat. There's about 105 parcels that are more than 75% covered by Tier 1 significant wildlife habitat area. And it just shows you the breakdown by acreage there.
Point of clarification, Melinda, just to make sure I'm thinking about this correctly. These constrained parcels today, if they were to apply for a permit for redevelopment or subdivision, et cetera, the bylaw language currently states that impacts to SWHA need to be minimized, as opposed to they could not be subdivided.
Correct. It says, so in that case, we would work with the landowners to try to minimize those impacts on significant wildlife habitat, but there's nothing that says that you can't develop in significant wildlife habitat.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And here I've highlighted there's 7 parcels that are over 100 acres. I believe it says over 100 acres, and they're not over 95% constrained, or over 95% covered by significant wildlife, Tier 1 significant wildlife habitat. So I don't know, think of those as, those are good candidates for potential transfer of development rights or potential purchase of development rights. And then when you look at those parcels on the ERF prioritization map, 6 of those are high priority for conservation.
So 6 out of the 7.
Yeah, and I think this was the only one that was a medium and not a high priority.
Is that, Melinda, part of the Johnson farm?
This? No.
Yeah.
Johnson Farm is over here.
Who owns this?
That Conant?
Yeah, I think so.
Who's
Yeah.
that?
Conant. Yeah, I think.
Linda, you said 6 are high priority for conservation, and I only see 5 circles there, and I'm wondering if the 6th circle should be the Griswold property over on the left-hand corner.
Yeah, so that is high priority, in fact, but it was not one of the parcels that were in this previous slide as being over 100 acres and 95% covered by significant wildlife habitat
So that
as
circle,
mapped.
so the one circle that was kind of center right actually has multiple. There are
Right.
3 parcels there. 2 out of the 3
Yes,
are
one, right.
already on
one-
our list.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then this is the 7th one, but it's classified as a medium.
Is that are they landlocked parcels or? Because it's the Johnson farm is all conserved.
I doubt it. You just can't see the driveways here. I mean, I haven't looked real closely at those, but anyway,
So- Those are just the, as you're driving up towards Williston up Route 2 from the Winooski River, they're just those cornfields that across from Corn's Barn, right? That's what we're looking at.
Oh, that's not
think-
89.
I think we're south of
No.
89
No.
though.
yeah, it's
Oh,
south
are
of
we?
89.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on the other side. So as you go down French Hill on the highway, it would be off to the right.
Yeah, I
All
think,
right, and then Conant has that undercut or pass through or whatever under 89 to get to that.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
And then
Sense.
while I'm up in Talking Stick and we're trying to figure out where we are in town, what's the one parcel that's north of 89?
That looks like it's the Williston Sand parcel. I
Okay.
think it's owned by Williston Sand. It's got a big gravel mine in there or something, you can see.
So that's not owned by the farmers there?
I
Can't
don't
remember their last
believe,
name.
I don't believe it is.
I think it used
but
to be.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry if I keep going.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure. So in thinking about like how revised regulations might work, like say you were to what South Burlington is doing, or what their draft regulations now say, I don't know, maybe they've adopted them already, but is they've come up with this idea that, okay, we'll allow some development of these high priority wildlife habitat areas, but you have to replace that area with another area of equal size or greater. And you have to restore that so that it functions as a wildlife habitat within a certain amount of time. So, maybe
You trade within your property.
kind of, so.
Well, is it within the property or potentially across other properties in town?
This is within the property.
Okay.
If it was, or if it was a trade with another property, maybe you could see that as more of a transfer of development rights, but this would be within the same property.
Okay.
So here's an example. It's a large parcel, and it's 78% covered by Tier 1 SWHA, over 100 acre parcel. It still has 25 acres of unconstrained land. So say the owner wants to develop over here, right? So under our current regulations, we would probably say, no, you can't develop that. We'd rather you develop an area that's not covered by significant wildlife habitat. So they decide to put a house here instead, right? Under amended regulations, the owner wants to develop this area for whatever reason. Maybe they already have a house here and they want, another house right here or something.
Or better driveway placement on the road,
Better-
whatever.
Yeah, so we now allow them to develop here, but we say you have to take this area that wasn't previously designated, it was just a field. You have to take this area and designate it as Tier 1 habitat and restore it so that it functions that way, by planting trees and not mowing and, stuff like that. So so this is arguably a better outcome for the town, because now you have the habitat is less fragmented, and it's, you know, you're creating significant wildlife habitat next to a big, what's already a big forest block. And then this area is not habitat anymore, but it's less fragmenting than putting a house right here, and it's closer to the road. So, you know,
It's a
arguably,
trade-up.
right, by allowing flexibility, you could end up with a better outcome. Let's see.
So, if I can interrupt, I think this is, you know, this is on this one example anyway, this is a very interesting analysis, and very helpful for picturing how this could work. I guess a couple of, I don't know, caveats, questions, concerns, I don't know what you want to call it, but observations is that, you know, in this example, which I can definitely see playing out in several parcels across town, it's not, there shouldn't be the expectation that it's an even trade-off to go from B to A. We're removing what is something that is currently identified as significant wildlife habitat area within a parcel, and then they do whatever, you know, plant trees or just let it go wild. It's not going to be significant wildlife habitat. There's not going to be an immediate replacement for significant wildlife habitat. You know, 30 years, maybe it will be, but there is a time lag there. And that's just, there's nothing we can do to fix that. It's just something to keep in mind. If we're crediting ourselves, we can't really credit ourselves until sometime in the future as replacing that habitat.
Yeah, I agree with Eric. I think your definition of restoration needs to be pretty clear cut too, and which is probably hard to do. I mean, some people might consider, okay, I'm just going to put a fence around it and not do anything in it, versus planting trees, enhancing a wetland, you know, various other things that you could do to do that. You know, I'm wondering, you know, I know it's hard to justify, but maybe you have something like it that you replace it with 1.2% of the area.
Yeah,
or
I was
some
going to
kind
say
of
1.5,
increase.
Gary.
Yeah, yeah, whatever. You know, something
Yeah.
else that would in a sense be better in the long run. But Eric's right. You know, it could be 50, 100 years before it's of any value.
Yeah, you could say,
And yeah, and maybe it doesn't have a wetland.
Contiguous.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe the B doesn't have a wetland and A had a wetland, and therefore you're never going to get it as good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there could be ways to strengthen that, like restoration plan has to be approved by the Conservation Commission. You know, yeah, come up with a plan, and both the relocation and the restoration plan has to be approved by a Conservation Commission, so that you know that, you know, you're not just taking something at face value, but you're actually doing some investigation to make sure that it's really going to be worth it, you know.
Are these parcels like the B, would that be forever protected, or 50 or 100 years from now, as development pressure gets more, they'd say, well, yeah.
So I think in this case, it would, and I believe that I put this in the draft language, that the relocated area becomes part of the protected open space.
Yeah, I think a big thing for me is if you think about that little area called B here, if they wanted to do that in the southwest corner, it wouldn't add much value. So
Right.
when there's having the Conservation Commission have to sign off on the restoration plan gets us closer, I think, but there almost needs to be like some collaboration to choose what area is of most value to basically, I mean, because this is the SWHA is basically defined primarily by canopy cover.
Right, and
So
that would be part of it as well. that the Conservation Commission needs to review
Yeah,
what the replacement area is, and has to approve it, and has to approve a restoration plan. For that
yeah,
area.
I think that's a really good comment, Gary. I like that.
Gary,
Um,
I have a question for you, just because I don't understand this. So, what is wrong with letting parcel B, instead of planting trees and thinking about it becoming forest cover, what is wrong with having it, start to come up like you would any gap in the forest, where you have succession, where you have the birch or whatever come up and shrubs, and then it eventually turns in, different, it's more biodiversity, more wildlife use, different aspects of the forest. Why does it need to be 100 years down the road? I actually don't know the answer to that. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, I don't know if I know the answer for sure, but I think there is nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think you get wildlife benefits from fields and unmanaged areas. I mean, it won't be the same as a forest though until it is a forest. So,
yeah.
maybe it adds to diversity if we just don't touch it. It just depends on what the wildlife benefits are of this area and what are you trying to enhance, basically.
And that's why I brought this up originally, because if parcel A is, just go with extreme examples here. If parcel A is an old growth forest of some sort, and we allow that to be cleared, and it would and allow and work with the developer to turn parcel B into conserve space or whatever, and parcel B is currently open space, a field or something like that, we are not replacing A with B. We're just setting aside another chunk of land to eventually become maybe old growth forest, but it's going to be a long time before it gets there. And I think just my one concern, and I don't know how I would address this or even if we need to, but it's if parcel B were in this example an open field and we just let it go wild, what's around there that would repopulate it? Would it be maples and poplars and birches, or would it be buckthorn and phragmites and whatever, so there's lots of things to think through, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I guess it just depends. Usually when you do something like this, you might set some goals. What are you trying to achieve by mitigating and in some cases, maybe because this is so wooded around there, having an open field that's protected might be a good thing. I don't know. It just depends on what your goals are. If your goals are, like Eric said, to establish another area that's old growth trees, then this isn't going to work. But I think it's going to vary from place to place, and that's why we would hopefully have a say on where the replacement area is and what the goals are of it.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt one more time, Gary. I have another question for you. My understanding is that there is no old growth forest. I mean, that the forests in Vermont are all even aged, which is why it's actually good to cut some of it down like Ethan does at Catamount and make patch cuts so that you can bring diversity back. So I guess I'm not sure I'm clear on the concept of taking, it would be forest, not old growth forest. If there was old growth forest, it should be certainly preserved, but.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
all right, my example may not have been accurate, but
but there's certainly a difference between an open field and a 200-year-old forest, or even 100-plus-year-old forest. And the main thing is it takes 100 years to get to that point where it's a different habitat than a field. Old growth may have not been the correct term, but forests that haven't been
established forest.
Established forest. I mean, and there's a lot of terms. There's very little, if any old growth forests in Vermont. Like 85% of it was cut during in the 17 and 1800s. But So anyways, I think it's, as long as we have goals and desires for replacing replacing A with B, then I think it's a good idea to do it this way. But I also think, we should keep in mind that there should be a method of a mitigation in another piece of property that, and I know we've talked about this years ago, where we identified areas, we've done it, if we know of areas that are of conservation value, maybe somehow the property owner buys a chunk of that to replace A. I mean, that's what they did with the big box stores, and there was some mitigation associated with that with Jeff Davis years ago.
So
Yeah, and-
I
Thank you.
totally derailed Melinda's presentation. That looks like you have at least 5 more examples and we're only on 1. Sorry, Melinda.
Sorry, Melinda, that was my fault. Keep
Not at
going.
That was
all.
totally mine, totally mine.
No, not at all. I think this is a really good discussion to have. So, and this is really the only example in the lot that involves an exchange of land. So, yeah. So anyway, another example. This is a parcel that's just over 10.5 acres. So it's subject to open space rules. It's 78% covered by Tier 1 SWHA. There's 2.3 acres outside of the Tier 1, but it's all in Tier 3 SWHA. So the owner wants to subdivide, and they're proposing this area to build a house site. So, under our current rules, and I guess what would happen even under these potentially under these amended rules, you would require the owner to place the house outside of Tier 1, but allow them to develop on the Tier 3 SWHA, because there really isn't another alternative if they want to do a subdivision. And then as a result, all the Tier 1 SWHA gets protected as open space. So that's also a potentially good outcome. Not dissimilar, not different really from what you would do under today's regulations. Only I think this having habitat that's designated as high priority just allows for reinforcement and allows the regulations to have a little more teeth than the way they are now, where everything is kind of equal. So any comments or questions about that example? And then I have one more example.
I just had a quick comment on this. If we were looking at this, I would also say in the upper side there's that corridor, the red corridor. I would want to know, where's that leading, and is it a valuable wildlife corridor? In that case, you might protect that as well, maybe, or at least the piece that's on, that red stripe through the. So at least the piece that's on the land you would want protected in the open space as well, if it leads to anything.
Yeah, good point. In this example, these are houses, lots on Shallow Lane, which is right. Brownell Mountain is over here. So just to give you some context for this. The next example is actually right next to this parcel. And in this example, you've got a parcel that's too small to be subject to open space rules. It's 97% covered by Tier 1 habitat. And there's only a 1/4 acre outside the significant wildlife habitat, the Tier 1 habitat. So
is that already a structure there, Melinda? Is that what?
Yes,
why that
it's a house. It's a house.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So the owner wants to subdivide. They want to put a driveway in and carve out a little building envelope up here. And, you know, this, as you know, would fragment the remaining tier 1 significant wildlife habitat. In this case, because, you know, because they're so constrained, and because, you know, they have landowner rights, they're allowed to subdivide, but they have to move the house as close to the road. They have to move the building envelope close to the road, you know, as they can, to minimize impacts to the significant wildlife habitat. And, you know, this is going to be less fragmenting than that. And, you know, again, this is kind of what we do under today's regulations. So it's not really any different. It's just, you know, for a parcel that is this constrained, you know, greater than 95% covered by SWHA, it gives some flexibility for those situations.
I have a question about this one, Melinda.
Mhm.
In this particular scenario, I don't know if you know the answer, but would this parcel already be limited to subdividing once, meaning adding one, splitting one into two, or based on acreage, or is that just the scenario you've presented here, and potentially they could be asking to add 2 lots?
Yeah, they could potentially, you know, they depending on what the allowed density is, and that
Yeah.
will take steep slopes and wetlands into account.
Yep.
But yeah, the density could support a 3 or 4 lot split. So
because this example has just the one, you know,
mhm.
area A there, but in my mind, on a parcel like this, I am heavily conflicted because I want the owner to be able to benefit financially from the land that they own. And I know many people who, you know, plan to subdivide or to add units to sell or rent as part of their long-term financial plan. But
Mhm.
when I look at this map, my initial answer is no, or if yes, only 1 unit.
Mhm.
We shouldn't be allowing additional subdivision, even if the acreage technically supports it for density. So that's I'm just really conflicted on a case like this.
Mhm.
Melinda, are these examples actual proposals, or are they scenarios that you have created for discussion?
They're simply hypothetical scenarios.
Okay.
So what comes to my mind on something like this is offsite mitigation. You know, I don't know if how hard that is to impose, but this might be the case where somebody would contribute a little bit of money towards buying a wetland somewhere in town that we've already pre-identified. Just a thought.
A donation to the ERF in exchange
Well,
for it
yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
thing.
we've talked about that in the past, and it is a possibility if we designate areas that are of high value that could be used for kind of offsite mitigation.
Mhm.
It might be helpful when we're looking at this to zoom out as well. Because right now we're just looking at that one parcel, but in the
Mhm.
big picture, it might not seem like it's that we wouldn't be as conflicted about allowing more houses to be built there, if that makes sense.
Let me see if I can pull something up that.
Yeah, where those screenshots came from.
Well, yeah, I mean, I won't be able to open up ArcMap, but I'll pull up a big map that you can look at. I will stop this, and then I'll share that. Do you see that? Map?
Yes,
Okay, so actually, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more. So the parcels we're looking at are these two right here.
Which, what road is that? Or neighborhood?
It's over near
Brun-
Brownell Mountain.
East
Brownell
of
Mountain.
Brunel Mountain.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, they are small, but arguably this is an important area and one that you wouldn't want to keep chipping away at, you know, even
Mm.
from the outside.
Jens talked a lot about that.
Mhm.
The erosion of the edge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, it is tricky, and it's, you do have to sort of think about, if you're really going to protect these, how do you compensate the landowner appropriately?
Is
Uh,
this,
Yeah.
Linda, in our RZD zone?
ARZD.
ARZ,
yeah,
okay.
south of the highway, yeah.
So 75% has to be protected. Oh, no, it's under 10 acres.
If it's, you know,
Yeah,
So,
Right.
just in the hypothetical world, like, again, or still maybe, and I'm definitely not proposing this, but do you see us getting to a point in areas like that where the town eventually says, okay, this portion of town is developed, no more development?
I foresee
Uh,
it.
Because in a scenario like that, I could see that kind of thing playing out where we just say, okay, Brownell Mountain is a very significant wildlife area. There's lots of other elements happening there.
Mhm.
We need to protect it, and
Well-
we just need to prohibit any additional development.
Well, I think if the town is going to do that, then it needs to be prepared to buy this land. You know,
Yeah.
again, it sort of comes down to what are people's rights as property owners, and
Or to purchase the development rights and say, yeah, there's no
Right.
problem with you living there. You already live there, just no more development.
yeah,
And base, what sometimes it comes down to is they need money. So if there was
Mhm.
funds available to purchase development rights.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love the
that-
idea of paying people to not develop because
right. Sorry, go ahead.
just because that's what we're trying to do, right? We're not trying to tell people you can't live in that part of town. I mean, that fragmentation has already been been done. And we were just talking about how long it takes for an area to recover to have an established forest. If that's, you know, we've already established that that's a high priority to have these the core habitat protected. So it's not about telling people you can't live there. It's about protecting further erosion.
Yeah,
and-
and I guess this kind of gets into
Mhm.
the direction I thought we were going to go, and maybe we are, and just haven't gotten there. Is you know, we need to, from my perspective, you know, thinking as a developer might, not a developer, so I don't really know how a developer thinks, but as I could guess what a developer might think is they're doing the same kind of exercise across town and thinking, okay, where's the potential for new neighborhoods or developments to build new neighborhoods and developments. And I think as Terry pointed out last meeting, there's that a lot of that is farmland, and that's what we're, for lack of a better word, competing against, is that. And so that we need to be doing that same thing. Okay, we are identifying, that's what we've been doing, is identifying these critical areas or areas that are important for X, Y, and Z reasons that we've identified. But then we need to be able to take the next step and say, okay, this parcel or these parcels are important. We need to buy them. And the town needs to buy them before the developers do.
Mhm. Can you all see my screen again? The chapter 27?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so,
If you could zoom in
there-
slightly, it would help my eyes, Melinda.
sorry.
Apologize, I'm on a small
I gotta
screen.
put you up on my big screen here.
Yeah, so, so there is language that, says if the property has only conservation areas or has no other lands physically suitable for development, the Conservation Commission and the DRB will work to either affect transfer of development rights or to reconfigure development and designate open space. So I think that we have probably rarely pursued the first part of that, which is purchase or transfer development rights. And, so maybe it's just, necessary to really look at that more as an option. Of course, you have to have money to be able to do that.
And
But-
here it says transfer of development rights, but it doesn't say purchase of development rights.
Right, so, I think.
Our
that
funds
could
might
be-
stretch further if we were purchasing development rights rather than outright purchasing properties.
Right, but I mean, yeah, I think, could be purchase of development rights. A transfer of development rights kind of indicates that there's a willing landowner on the other side who wants to buy these development rights and build somewhere else.
I mean, I think you could add that mitigation stuff in here too, if we had an area that we wanted to preserve,
Mm,
the offsite mitigation.
mhm. Yeah.
So that situation has not come up for a long time where a developer wanted to develop a particular piece of land and they would buy the development rights from another parcel.
Um,
It's been an exception rather than a common occurrence, right, Melinda?
yeah, I would say it hasn't been used very often. The one example I can think of is when Al Seneca wanted to develop Keystone and wanted to put like 60 units, which at the time I believe would have been allowed. But that he essentially affected a transfer of development rights where those units that would have gone where Keystone is went to Cottonwood Development, and the town got 14 acres, got a 14-acre parcel. So
that that was just within the last 10 years.
when did that happen? I think it was like more like 15 years ago. Is that right,
Yeah.
Carl?
I think so. I think it was
Yeah,
more than 10 years.
yeah. So
That's,
yeah,
that's the last one I remember too.
right. Well, technically there was another TDR with Finney where there's a 28 acre parcel north of the Allen Brook, adjacent to Brennan Woods, that Pecor owned, and it's high, it's pretty constrained, but I guess it has or had development potential, and Snyder transferred the development potential from that parcel over to
The south
The
side of
Finney-
Allenbrook.
over the south side of Allen Brook, and the town, and gave the 28-acre parcel to the town. So that's another example.
I think big picture, the examples you showed today, Melinda, emphasized for me that it's even more than I thought before, that it's going to be important to have the public comment period to see what landowners would like to see, what tools landowners would like to see the town utilize to balance the need to protect habitat while still preserving the benefit of landowners. You know, do they prefer transfer development rates? Do they prefer purchase of development rights? Do they prefer town purchase of parcels, which requires higher taxes to fund a ERF? You know, what method of preserving habitat do they prefer to see?
Mhm.
Melinda, thank you for those examples. They kind of, yeah, bring up a lot of important points and that we need to look at going forward. And I know we're not going to have time to move on to our next agenda item because we only have a couple minutes left. But did anyone else have any comments in the last 2 minutes of the meeting?
What was our last agenda item? Did we cover everything?
Looking at draft language.
Draft
Oh.
language.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Linda,
that's
is
gonna
that-
take a while.
Now that you were able to update the PowerPoint format, are you able to save that as a PDF so we can refer to it as we consider the draft language?
I can work on it. I wasn't able to save it successfully. I'm gonna have to fiddle with a few of the slides.
Okay.
So that you can actually see the examples that, yeah, but I'll see if I can do that and upload it as a PDF.
Yeah, when you have a chance. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
Laura, I looked up the information on this, on the number of animals that were caught in traps that were non-target animals. And I'd like to send you that information. This comes from other states and it also comes from the federal government.
Yeah, okay, please do send that to me. My email address.
Can I get your email address?
It should be, if you were sent an invitation, were you, or did you get on the town website?
I went
Yeah,
on the
I'll-
website.
Peggy,
Okay.
I've got your email, so let me connect the two of you after the meeting by email.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you
Perfect.
people should see this because you've doubted what I've said and it's pretty well substantiated.
Yeah, Peggy, we didn't doubt it at all. We just, some of us we just wanted to make sure that a statement has something to back it up, that's all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Every statement should have merit. I totally agree with you. I mean, otherwise you're basing your decisions on false information, but this isn't false.
Yeah. Thank you for sending that information and I'll pass it on to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Peggy, for staying also.
Oh, you're very welcome. I left for a few minutes because I wanted to get this data for you.
Okay, everyone have a great holiday.
You too.
Yeah, take care.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays, everyone.
Okay,
Thank
Yep.
you.
Great.
officially ending the
everyone.
meeting. Thank you, bye.
Bye.
I know.